welcome our online and in-person attendees to the third day of the Academy Week, and a happy Eid al-Adha to our Muslim brothers and sisters. For this session, we do have an elder, Jeff Wage, Professor of International Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and also chairperson of the Scientific Committee of the ANH Academy. That's the short version of Jeff that he's elected that you should know. The long version is that he's a multifaceted individual with a very long professional career. Therefore, it would be inconsiderate of me to try and describe him based on his career, and it would just take up too much time. There's one thing that I would like you to know about Jeff Thorne. He's an impatient optimist and a card-carrying member of Extinction Rebellion scientists. I was therefore, as some of you are, a little confused that the Extinction Rebellion scientists who advocate for quick action to avert ecological breakdown would use fire as a backdrop for this conversation. But I'm reassured that the fuel source that we're using for this fire is sustainable because it is our collective imagination. Without much further ado, let me invite Jeff to the podium so that he can call his panelists. Please give a round of applause to Jeff.
Thank you, Ken, for that kind of introduction. It is indeed a pleasure finally to be in a Southern Hemisphere country during Academy Week where a fireside chat seems to be a bit sensible rather than the sweltering fireside chats we've had in India and Ghana. So it's nice to have the plan, the design fit the temperature, which is great. So I'm going to occupy my seat. We're going to have a really interesting fireside chat session. We've got two fireside chats, each about half an hour, and I think they're not interconnected. One will be exploring with experts from our host country, Malawi, issues around agriculture, nutrition, health, so that all of us around the world can understand the particular experience here. And the next, we will be moving to the international research agenda of the CGIAR and their global activity as well. So we're going to have two separate ones. And so for my first chat, I'd like to invite to these cozy chairs two distinguished colleagues, both professors at the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. So please come up. Tina Manani is the Dean and Faculty of Food and Human Sciences, and also my co-chair on our scientific committee for Academy Week. And Alexander Kalambira is the head of Department of Human Nutrition and Health at LUNR, and also, of course, our masterful Master of Ceremonies yesterday. Welcome, Tina. Welcome, Alex. For all of us attending the meeting here in Malawi and the hundreds more online, the Academy Week offers a real opportunity to dive deep into the experiences of a particular country in agriculture, nutrition, health research. And I think that's a real feature of going around the world and holding our sessions in different parts of it. Yesterday, I think we'll all agree, we had a fantastic presentation by the Minister of Health and other presenters on the situation of agriculture, nutrition in Malawi, and particularly the issues arising out of recent climatic events. Today, what I'd like to do in our short session is to focus on research, on agriculture, nutrition, health research. You know, as a community, we all seek to address key interdisciplinary problems across agriculture, nutrition, and health. Always a challenge because it's interdisciplinary. And I'd like to kick off by a question to you. What do you feel are key issues today in Malawi in this area? And how are you approaching research in this interdisciplinary manner? I'm not sure which of you would like to kick off with that. Tina?
can start. I think as we heard yesterday, the key issue at the moment in Malawi is climate change and how it has impacted us. But I don't want to repeat what the presenters yesterday talked about, but I want to focus on an issue that seems to be forgotten when we're talking about climate change, and that's the threat of how climate change is going to heighten the threat of food safety to the food supply chain. So I'll just take Malawi as a case in point here. The minister yesterday talked about cholera. Cholera is not new in Malawi, but what we experienced beginning last year, March, up to February this year is something that is strange. We have observed that the cholera outbreak was long, and this is in line what has been predicted about climate change in terms of pathogens, their virulence, their persistence. And then we're asking ourselves that should we say that we have new strains which are more persistent in terms of cholera out there? And then maybe should we talk about maybe behavior practices which have changed? Because before the cholera outbreak, we had COVID. And the year that we had COVID, there was no case of cholera. But just after the cholera case, we observed that the cholera outbreak was uncontrollable. So have consumers changed in terms of their behavior? So there are a lot of questions that need to be asked around the cholera situation in terms of pathogens, consumer behavior, and maybe our ecosystem. But then I also want to talk about another issue, which this the prevalence and persistence of pathogens is bringing in the food system as well. And this is in connection with crop and animal production, because we are going to have, microorganisms that are difficult to control. That will also increase the use of antibiotics. But in our discussion, it seems like we are forgetting to talk about these issues. And right now, the antimicrobial resistance is already a global problem. So if our approaches in food systems are not trying to address the issues of animal production, crop production with regards to antimicrobials, it means we are all like exacerbating or increasing the situation that is already worse. So at the moment, Malawi, I think, is number 2 when it comes to what they call resistant index in Africa with 74%. So it means when we are approaching food systems, we should be holistic. So there are a lot of research questions that we should be asking so that we minimize the use of antimicrobials, we minimize, the persistence of pathogens in the food chain. I think I should stop there at the moment.
Thanks, Tina. One of the things that comes to mind in those 2 excellent examples is how do you bring the groups of people together who have to work on this? Obviously, the whole issue around infectious diseases occupies a particular part of health that isn't always the same part as nutrition research. Do you have experiences with creating teams or doing that kind of thing?
Yes, there are experiences. I think in Malawi, we have collaboration with one university in Germany, the University of Hohenheim, which we've tried to bring together experts from different fields and to look at food systems and taking the angle of one healthy approach. So with this collaboration, experts from different fields, agriculture, veterinary, medical field, and also regulators in the various capacities and authorities have been invited to one room and then have a discussion on maybe what can work and try to come up with strategies of working together, because as I have indicated, the issues are interdisciplinary. So no one field or no one university can address these issues. We need to do them together. So, yeah.
It's like it creates a real need for collaboration and partnerships. I think partnerships, one of the themes that we'd like to bring out in our chats today. We've had a lot of discussion earlier this week about the political economy of research in agriculture, nutrition, health, and the extent to which many of the partnerships that form are ones that might deserve more equity and more balance between what I think we learned yesterday we might call the global majority and the global minority. So one question I'd like to ask, since you raised this point about international collaboration, is what's your experience of partnerships, and how have they worked for research in agriculture, nutrition, and health here? Alex, you've got a thought on that?
Thank you. So I'd like to give the example of our collaboration with several institutions, academic and research institutions in the United Kingdom, and also in this part of Africa. So we've had long-term partnership beginning about 10, 12 years ago, when we had colleagues from the University of Nottingham and London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, University of East Anglia, and the British Geological Survey. That emanated from a PhD student who was studying at the University of Nottingham. He was one of a government official and working on soils and soil fertility and trying out new technologies that may work. And out of his publications of demonstrating how nutrient profiles can be improved in the crops that we grow, particularly focusing on maize, which is the staple food in this country. We had subsequent discussions coming out of that to look at how can we further that work. And we started these discussions really by having small projects, and there was this level of trust that I saw really, really at the beginning, where our colleagues were not coming to impose ideas, but we co-created issues, identified issues together, and co-created research questions and the project. And we started really small, one small project in the north of Malawi. I mean, one project, and we collected data in the north of Malawi and went down south, shipped that data to the UK for analysis, and were able to publish a few papers out of it. Then, based on that collaboration and understanding and mutual agreements and everyone really inputting into that collaboration, we started getting bigger and bigger and got more funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and were able to mount a much larger project, the Geonutrition Project, which also later on had a feeding trial attached to it. We're trying to improve, to see how we can improve selenium deficiency in this country. And that was a turnaround. And so what I saw there were several things. One is a level of trust among partners, North and South. You sit together, you co-create. But also embedded within the partnership we've enjoyed with our colleagues from the UK. And this has been also, University of Addis Ababa has been part of it, and lately University of Zimbabwe, is capacity building. Capacity building taking two forms. One is it my mic? Maybe I need to change. Capacity building in the form, taking two forms. One was, is an arrangement, the 2x2 arrangement. Students spending 2 years in this country, and then also then moving on to a university in the UK to be able to access laboratory facilities, to access libraries and others, and have joint supervision of professors from here and then professors from there. And we have, over the last so many years, graduated several at PhD level, because Africa lags behind in terms of PhD level training. And so that 2x2 arrangement enabled students to access facilities in the north, and yet still do their research and receive supervision in the south, and therefore enhance local capacity. That has been an interesting model, and I think we can replicate that in very many ways. Another one has been not a 2x2, but where students are recruited, admitted at a local university like Luana, but then we make arrangements through the projects, and our colleagues in the North are ready to accept the students, to supervise them, to work with them, although the students who graduate from here. I think that has then given us sufficient confidence in terms of sustainability of that kind of partnership, which continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. Yeah.
That's a really interesting example. Do you feel there's been a trend? I mean, my impression is it didn't used to be like that so much. To what extent do you feel that Malawi and national programs have agency now in demanding this, or how might they do that in terms of increasing the equity of the projects involved?
From our experience, I think there's a lot of potential from our experience at Luana that if we engage with partners who are honest, who are sincere about entering in this partnership, and that we also see the partnership not just benefiting the two institutions, Luana and, for example, University of Nottingham or London School, but extending to the policy holder government, because some of the students who have taken through these are working in the research institutions in the country. They don't belong to Luana, they don't belong to anything but government. We're able to extend this to them. And when we made an offer and say, hey, there's an opportunity for students for PhD training, lots of candidates were available. And I think there's that, the need is there, the appetite is there to advance this, and the government workers that we worked with in identifying appropriate candidates to enter these programs were very, very supportive of this. So the soil in Malawi in terms of that kind of partnership is very fertile. We need to continue to grow in it. And particularly the trust, I think, that each institution, whether north or south, has a take in it, can learn out of it, and together we grow, I think, yeah.
Right, thanks. Yeah, it sounds like in a lot of these projects, you need to link up, not just externally, but internally between groups and disciplines. Do you have some structures for collaboration across agriculture, nutrition, health, in or committees or groups that get together here in Malawi that might be interesting for others trying to do this in other parts of the world?
Yes, we have some structures. Maybe I can begin with the structures that exist at Luana. Previously, I think collaborations or partnerships were based on an individual's network. So depending on how wide your network is, you'll be involved in a number of projects. And maybe others with a equally capacity will not be involved in any other partnerships because they haven't been exposed yet. So looking at that challenge, Luana established the Directorate of Research and Outreach. So through this directorate, when the university gets requests on different activities, be it projects or outreach activities, then it's the director who is responsible to identify within the institution. And also, the directorate can also link the institution with outside partners just to make sure that our partnership are formal and also recognized, and also the institution gets to benefit from those partnerships so that they become sustainable. Coming to Malawi, I think in terms of the nutrition, there's the National Nutritional Coordination Committee. So this one is multi-stakeholder, different organizations, academia, civil society, and even organizations that are implementing different nutrition activities are involved. So periodically they do meet and have discussions, and also in the committee we have partners or donors like USAID, Irish Aid, and different development partners who participate. So through that, there's great coordination when it comes to nutrition activities, as well as some level of nutrition financing. But yes, we do have a structure at national level.
All right. And how does that work out in terms of identifying research priorities? What would you feel are the real points that you need to increase, the gaps that you need to fill in terms of research around agriculture, nutrition, health here in Malawi?
So for us, in the experience that I gave working with our colleagues in the UK on the geonutrition project, the AHA feeding trial, and also right now, the MAPS project, the identification of what we need to do is based on what are the existing needs of the country. And so, as Tina indicated, we have the national committee. And my experience is that these need to be driven by what are the priorities of the host nation, for example, in Africa. So for us to engage in a selenium and zinc trial, this didn't just come out of the blues. This is mentioned in the National Nutrition Policy. This is in the National Micronutrient Strategy, that these are key nutrients of need. And then we conducted research via one of the director of nutrition. He was pursuing his PhD at Nottingham and was able to publish a paper to show how much, to quantify the deficiency in Africa, in Malawi in terms of selenium. And then we embarked on a trial to try to fix that using agronomic practices. So you're using evidence based on what's existing in the national priorities and to do research. And I think that's the kind of research that's likely to be well received by government. And I can say that throughout our partnership, we have seen a lot of support from government because we are doing research that is responding to issues they have highlighted in policy and other relevant documents. Yeah, that's a driving force.
Okay.
Can I add on that one?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so apart from partners identifying the research priorities, as a nation, we also do have research agenda. Like for nutrition, there's a research agenda that was developed some time back. Of course, now it's under review. But the process of developing the national research agenda in nutrition also involves multiple stakeholders. Those who are implementing one or more activities in nutrition, and other stakeholders that may be indirectly involved. So these are invited, and then there's a technical committee that is formed, and then they do kind of a research or a needs assessment to find out which are the research issues that should be prioritized for that period. So when that is done, then we have a research agenda document that can be used as, a means of maybe looking for finances and prioritizing what should be done at national level. So not only do we have the nutrition research agenda, there's also a research agenda in the healthy sector. So considering the interdisciplinarity of these disciplines, even the healthy sector do invite nutritionists and other related disciplines to participate when they are developing their national healthy research agenda, and that will guide the priorities of research as a nation. Yeah,
that's great to see all these links being built between those sectors. One of the things that came up yesterday in the minister's presentation that seems to be a particular issue at the moment in Malawi is the impact of extreme weather events. I guess the typhoon of earlier this year has focused attention, but more generally, there seems to be a real concern about changing climate. And I get the impression that a sort of a research agenda is being built around that, and there's some issues that need to be addressed. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
I'll start, but Alex will add on. Okay, so when we're developing the nutrition research agenda, I think climate change was captured, but the way it was captured was more or less like a cross-cutting issues and looking at the predictions that were there in literature that may actually be there and impact, agriculture, nutrition, and health. But now that cyclone happened, looking at the impacts like in real life, I think we may need to reflect on other issues, maybe addressing nutrition in emergencies and, gender issues that do arise with, when people are under that circumstance. So maybe Alex can talk more about the nutrition in emergencies.
One of the issues that I think as a nation we need to be concerned about is when such disasters, and if we pick Cyclone Freddy as an example, that was extreme, but the weather events in this country every year they do occur, not to that extreme. We do have heavy rains at certain times, and because of degradation of the environment, when the water is flowing in this country, when it rains, you actually see the water looks brown. That's telling you it's taking away plenty of soil away. Yeah. And therefore, I think in terms of responding to that, not just the extreme, we need to be thinking that how much of that water is actually getting into the ground and getting stored into increasing the level of the aquifer, for example, so that our dambo lands, the wetland areas, would still have water months after. We seem to be losing that. And therefore, if we're going to do agriculture, we're not going to fix the climate issues today, but there is research that we can, I think, co-create with farmers in saying, okay, we don't have everything we need. We don't have the weather patterns, the rain patterns that we need, but how do we utilize the short rainy season or the little water that gets into the ground? So climate smart agriculture area is an area that I believe we need to invest a lot of research in, to say, okay, the context is here. We're not going to have normal rain patterns. What do we do with what we have? So there is potential for research in that area. From a nutrition perspective, I think then we need to be asking questions to say, when a disaster occurs of that nature out of extreme weather, what kind of dietary options now are there for people? Because it's very easy in those kind of times, if government does not watch out, if there is no policy guidelines for how do we feed people in emergencies, for foods that have minimal nutritive value to make it to those people in the form of aid, that these people are desperate, anything I give them, they will receive. And when you are desperate, you kind of receive anything. And we need to watch out and have the necessary legal infrastructure and frameworks, policies to guard against looking at people in such situations as a dumping ground, where you want to begin promoting highly refined foods that have a lot of salt and sugar and fat, because these people receive it anyway. Because what you're going to do there is create an appetite, a taste, that even after the disaster, then when you dangle these foods in their communities now for sale, people have tested them, they're likely to go for them. So we need to safeguard that even in times of need, we do not force food that is of low quality to those kinds of people as an interim measure while we are trying to rebuild and to get lives back.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a really interesting idea full of many co-benefits, co-benefits in nutrition, climate change adaptation, anticipating these problems. That's a very exciting idea, I think. Sadly, our time is just about up. We've just got a couple minutes left. It would be nice to have had more. Are there any have we missed anything that you feel we might learn from the Malawian experience in agriculture, nutrition, health, or any final thoughts to share with us?
Yeah, my final thoughts would be on really making access to food to be equitable. If we are going to have a sustainable food system, then it means we have to, address the issues that are there holistically. We cannot leave out some issues thinking that they are minor, because eventually those issues are either going to affect the health of the individuals or their livelihoods, because in the event that our food system is affected and the quality of our foods is really low in terms of safety, then we cannot participate even in markets. So it means the population in Malawi and other vulnerable populations will remain marginalized. We cannot participate in meaningful markets. We cannot improve our livelihoods. Our health is also deteriorating because the foods that we're eating are of poor quality. So we have to approach food systems in a holistic manner, taking into other issues that may affect our health into consideration. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Alex, final comments?
My last comment is with regard to the partnerships that we have had more than 10 years now of the partnership I've described. And I've come to believe that if we're going to have meaningful partnerships in terms of research responding to climate and food systems issues, we should get ready to be on a long haul, not the next 2-3 years and then the partnership is over. There's very little you can do. You're going to be in a rush. But I think projecting that once you begin it, you're seeing more and more opportunities into the future. You get smarter over time, you become wiser, and therefore you do more things together, get bigger grants, and respond to real national issues. So this business of small little grants in a short period of time, and then it's over, you begin looking for other partners, I don't think that's the way to go. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, what a great thought. I think something many of us would agree in, but it's great to hear it from your national program. And the thoughts you've given, very much appreciated. And thank you very much for joining me up here. And I think a round of applause for our speakers. For our next chat, I'm pleased to invite two researchers and colleagues in agriculture, nutrition, and health from the International Agricultural Research System, which is supported by the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research. Have we got the signs right? Okay. Purnima Menon is the Director of Food and Nutrition Policy at the International Food Policy Research Institute, one of the institutes at the CGIAR. Namiko Lakovic is the Regional Director for Eastern and Southern Africa of one CGIAR, something we'll be hearing more about later, and also the President of the African Nutrition Society. Very pleased to have you both here. Just a little bit of background, if I might, a historical indulgence. About 10 years ago, when we were developing what was to become the Academy, at the same time, the CGIAR was putting together a program, a cooperative research program on agriculture for nutrition and health, A4NH. This happy coincidence was not actually a coincidence, but that's another story. But these two initiatives developed a bit in parallel. And the A4NH, I think many of us here have familiarity with it, proved to be an outstanding program on agriculture, nutrition, health, ranging from providing research projects and research funding in a whole range of areas, all the way from women's empowerment in agriculture to the development of tools to measure nutrition and impacts of agricultural programs, biofortification, identifying and characterizing food systems and food policy, and even infectious diseases in agricultural systems. A really broad activity. The research and the researchers of A4NH became deeply woven into the fabric of the Academy, and many of them are still here today. And many of those programs have legacies, which you can see in the talks and the posters that we have here in Malawi. So it's been a very important relationship, and things are changing. So the A4NH program is finished, but also the CGIAR has undergone a development, a change. It is an organization where over its 60 odd years, it reinvents itself every now and then. And it's done that recently. And so I thought this was a really great opportunity to catch up with colleagues in the CG to understand what this new change is about, how it relates to our mutual interests in agriculture, nutrition, and health, and to come back to that issue of partnerships, which I know is extremely important to you, being an international organization that facilitates and so much research around the world. So maybe the first thing we could do is start with a bit of a description of what one CGIAR is, what its sort of principles are, and how it perhaps has evolved from the CGIAR we're most familiar with. Namakolo, would you like to kick off on that one?
Thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. I think you used the word reinventing, the CGIAR reinventing itself. I think the current cycle of reinvention, it really responds to the 2030 research and innovation strategy that really, if you look at it more broadly, takes on a much broader food systems perspective, because we talk about conducting research that can deliver on food, land, and water resources in a climate crisis. But in order to do that, the different CGIAR centers that focus on specific mandates can then come together to bring that more systems approach to what we are doing. And so the current transition that we have just gone through is intended to bring that togetherness much stronger. There is no one particular CG centers that addresses everything in agriculture and food systems, but together as a collective, we can actually do better. That's important because the challenges that countries are facing are not siloed into specific agendas of a particular domain of agriculture and food systems. They tend to occur together concurrently in a country. And in order to build the right type of momentum on the developments and the integration that is required, this integration of the CGIAR is important. And I think to me, it even speaks more strongly to agriculture, nutrition, and health, because it brings everything together. So in a nutshell, I think that to me, that's what one CGIAR is bringing. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Purnima, can I turn to you for the sort of obvious question of agriculture, nutrition, and health research in one CGIAR? What do you think it's going to look like? How is it going to develop now?
Right. Well, I think many of you know the A4NH program, long-standing supporter of the ANH Academy, and all of these engagements. I'm happy to tell you that the kind of research that needs to happen in a world as we look forward at food systems in times of crises hasn't gone anywhere, in the sense of it hasn't gone away despite the changes in the reform. Okay, so I think that's the first piece of good news. The way that research is done in our new context is a little different from how it was done in the period of A4NH, and so that I can speak to the research vehicles, but there are also some interesting structural changes in our in the organizational context of the CG that I think fully embrace and acknowledge the importance of these particular issues of nutrition and food systems. So first, let me talk about the research itself, because A4NH was a program that delivered research and engagement. And so the way research is done on food systems and nutrition now in the CGIAR is through a series of research initiatives. That's what they're called. There are a total of 27 thematic initiatives and 6 regional integrated initiatives that bring together a great deal of research on both old and new topics, continuing our work on breeding, continuing our work on agronomy, but really expanding our work on systems and especially food systems. So there are 2 notable, what we consider sort of core research initiatives that work on issues of diets and nutrition and food systems, and that's called SHIFT. And there's another one, it's Sustainable Healthy Diets is really what it means, but many of you will also hear it referred to by its acronym, Sustainable Healthy Diets and for Food Systems Transformation, if I got that right. And the second one is on fruits and vegetables in particular, recognizing that, those are foods that are really missing from people's diets. But there are several other research initiatives in our collection of 33 total research initiatives that are tackling issues that are very, very pertinent to diets, to nutrition, to food systems in times of crises. And so I think in the end, what we have is a body of research that will be done through these new vehicles for research that acknowledges the importance of this topic and is a real recognition within the CGIAR that this is not an area that we want to lose. It's in fact an area that we want to expand our research on. The second change is a structural change. So one of the new features of the CG reform is that the way research is organized in terms of the organizational structure of the CGIAR has also evolved. We have 3 science groups, and within each of the science groups, so we have one that's very focused on the breeding side, which is genetic innovations. There is some nutrition-related work happening there. There's a second that is called Resilient Agri-Food Systems. So a lot of our work on agronomy is linked into that research structure. And the third is on systems transformation, which is where my role sits. So within the science group of systems transformation, we have a department, an entire department called Food and Nutrition Policy that I have the privilege of leading, and an entire a unit within that department called Nutrition, Diets, and Health. And so in a sense, we've also created a structural anchoring for what we think is a very critical area of research. And I think between these 2 changes, the way research is done through the vehicles of the initiatives and this structural change, what we've done is, hopefully preserve and really expand the legacy of A4NH. So I know it's a little confusing as we move through this, but I see this as a real opportunity to not lose and instead to really expand the kind of work that we've been doing on this area.
Right, I see. Okay, so for instance, you mentioned the unit that you're running, and presumably then it links in with initiatives.
Correct.
So that it's
Correct.
It's creating, although it may be based in one center, it's working across centers.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
every single, and I think this is quite remarkable, every single one of those 33 research initiatives
Right.
includes multiple centers,
Yeah.
including in the leadership team. So we have 66 research leaders from across the CGIAR, from different centers who are developing the research programs for these initiatives. One of the initiatives I'm involved in has 5 centers, for example, one of the regional initiatives.
Well, tell us a bit about that so we get a feel for this.
Well, so I co-lead the regional integrated initiative in South Asia. And so it's actually led by somebody at CIMMYT who had never met before. He's an agronomist, Tim Krupnik. So it was quite a remarkable opportunity to co-design something that was very grounded for research for the region, but hitting a whole set of research topics that went from agronomy to diets. And so, just the design process was a real revelation for us as a design team in terms of bringing together insights, networks, research methods, research perspectives, and partnerships that the agronomists working in South Asia carried, that those of us working in diets and nutrition in South Asia carried, and not just our partnerships in the region. I think what we're trying to do is crowd in, the networks that we have globally as well, to bring, people together to tackle some of the big challenges for the region. So I found it a really quite a remarkable process of of design, and we're now in the middle of implementing.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the findings look like.
Yeah.
But
it's all very new. But you mentioned networks just now, and that sort of leads to another topic, which, as you know, we've already been exploring at the national level in Malawi, which is about partnerships and about how they might need to change in future with. And I know this has always been a big issue in the CGIAR because of the nature of the research you do. It's always sitting in and with national programs and helping them, and yet providing an international link. So I wonder if you could give me an idea of how that's looking in one CGIAR. I don't know, Namakula, whether you want to have a first go at that.
What was just being described by Panima is the research initiatives delivering specific research products in countries, in regions. Then thinking in terms of partnerships, I think an important aspect of the transition is this structural transformation at regional and country level in how we then deliver that research and the partnerships that we engage in. So the new CGIAR, the one CGIAR has got regions now, and I happen to lead the Eastern Southern Africa region. But in addition to that, in specific countries, we actually have country conveners. And the country convening perspective has some remnants of A4NH. The country convening efforts that were part of A4NH were a big lesson that has gone into this new structure. And essentially, what that looks at is how do the different research initiatives come together at country level? And how do they integrate into addressing the challenges that the country is facing, as we have heard from Alex and Tina earlier on. Each country is quite unique in the way in which food systems and agriculture challenges present themselves, and the type of solutions that will be relevant. And so each one of these research initiatives then holds consultations at country level to bring in those challenges that are being faced into the country, into the formulation of the research that then comes about, but also positions that research then for uptake into national programs. So national program leaders are part of that consultation. So in terms of partnership at country level, we then bring together national stakeholders, research institutions, universities, and others, so that the research at country level can be a lot more meaningful at addressing those challenges at a country level. I think it's a very useful way. I mean, I happen to serve as a country convener also for Ethiopia, where I am based, and it puts me in a very opportune environment where I can bring together all of CGIAR and actually then sit together with our national counterparts and actually contribute to what the research is going to be. And then in addition to that, look at joint resource mobilization efforts as well.
It must be a bit tricky because in the sense that what supports the CGIAR is coming in for program not decided at the national level, but at the international level by bilateral donors and multilateral donors have a great say in that. You have the challenge of then trying to match your program with national needs. The idea of co-creation is a bit problematic in that sense because you've got drivers from the financing side, but you have partners from the national side. Has that, what's been your experience? Well, it's new.
Yeah,
but,
so the challenge is actually catching that wave when the development partners are talking about what they are going to focus on. There are often little windows that open that you can crack a little bit wider, where how do you, and I think this is a role that CGIAR could do better, in that we can bring together with our country partners, we can crack some of those doors wider and actually bring that demand from country into those discussions. So when you are having discussions with funding organizations, I've been approached, for example, by a number of funding organizations who would say, we're starting an initiative on this, that, and the other. What is the situation on the continent? Where might things link? So there are openings where you can actually bring that in. But I think it's an area where we need to work better on. I think together, I like the one statement that Alex made, the fact that the kind of challenges we are facing on food systems cannot be addressed by a 2-3 project. We need to be in this for the long haul. But the implication for that is that the funding pipelines should also be in it for the long haul. So what can we do together, national partners, CGIAR, to actually bring in a more continuous pipeline of funding into agricultural research? And I think in the engagements that we have with those that fund, then we have a responsibility of bringing that demand to those discussions. It's always going to be a challenge, but I think we need to do better.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that it's a tremendous balancing act. So, you know, if you think a 3-year project funding cycle is short, we're actually in 3-year designed projects that have annual funding cycles. And that is really challenging from the perspective of setting up effective partnerships for research, delivering the research itself. And we have, you know, there are many conversations happening in the process of our, you know, of the current reform and restructuring to really speak to the importance of the adequacy, stability, and the flexibility of the financing of the research that the CG does. You know, we see that we have a tremendous opportunity here to, you know, to do research differently, to really use the fact that we're a tremendous network of institutes that are privileged to receive the kind of funding that we do, you know, from a global sense, but carrying out the responsibility that we then have, or the and in a sense, acting on the opportunity that we have to do things better, do things differently, also requires that, you know, that our financing is much more stable.
Confidence,
But one of, you know, I wanted to speak to the partnership issue, because one of the things that we have spent quite a lot of time reflecting on in the last 1.5 to 2 years as these new research initiatives were designed or have been designed and are being carried out, is what this means for how we approach research partnerships, especially partnerships in the Global South, and really thinking hard about, you know, how do we make our partnerships not just stronger for impact, but, you know, really bring a spirit of true partnerships and equitable partnerships to this. The coming together of these, you know, 66 research leaders, many of whom have been really mid-career research leaders in designing the initiatives, meant that we brought together a collection of people across the CGIAR, you know, bringing their entrepreneurial spirits, you know, their worldviews, to begin to, you know, also ask ourselves difficult questions. So, you know, we hosted, for example, a few meetings on decolonization of development research and what does it mean for what we do in the CGIAR. And it was fascinating to me, having heard some of the reflections, and I'm very familiar with that discourse in global health, but to realize that, you know, in soil sciences, in fisheries research, in, you know, more general agronomic research, even, people were beginning to ask the same questions. You know, how can we not be extractive? How can we not be exploitative? How do we actually build real research partnerships? And to realize that there's a whole collection of people across our system who have been reflecting on these and seeing these emerge from, you know, from their fields of research, but that we have a tremendous opportunity now with these 33 research initiatives, and with the update that we are already beginning to do to our portfolio of research, to ask ourselves some of these often difficult questions, but really be forward-looking in how we approach that, right? So we see the initiatives as vehicles for research. We're asking questions about partnerships within those vehicles. I've been amazed to see that CG centers are now hosting conversations in their annual meetings, for example, on equitable partnerships and decolonizing development research. So many of the CG centers are, doing strategic internal strategy refreshes, for example, as part of this reform. And at an institutional level, we're asking ourselves those same questions. We're looking at historic practices. We're talking about bibliometric analyses internally that really begin to open the box on how are we operating as researchers, research institutes that carry a great deal of responsibility and should have greater accountability. I think reflecting on what Namkola said, what has been interesting in the process of what has happened in the CG in the last 2 years is that our national counterparts have come together to also hold us accountable. And I think that's a powerful force as well. We should, it isn't just the CG as a global organization and individual sets of partners or individual countries, but people have come together in the global south also to ask the CG challenging questions. And I think this is fantastic because as we think forward to our next portfolio of research, which will come as soon as 2025, because like I said, we're in this 3-year research project, research initiative cycle, we have an opportunity to, to look at how we approach these issues of partnerships as well.
Well, it sounds like the platforms that you're creating at the national level to link up CG activities with national programs will be the opportunity for those countries to drive that dialogue with the CGIR. It is a really challenging and subtle problem, and I know you're at an early stage. I mean, just a reflection from the academy, you don't often see the extent to which inequity exists. I mean, in the academy, I know we've been trying very hard over the years to focus the activities of the academy in the global majority, as Kumi would have us discuss it. And that's reflected in the way in which we invite and select presentations here, and of course where we situate these meetings in countries in Africa and Asia when face-to-face, and where we can actually engage with national programs and regional scientists who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity. But when you look at although the program looks very much about studies in the global majority countries and involving projects run by scientists there and usually presented by scientists from there, they all relate back to research grants. I'd say the great majority, but certainly a lot of them sit in the administrative departments of northern institutions, universities and so on. And so beneath that, there still is this issue of how this research is generated.
If I may add something there, I think a lot of the inequities that we see global north-south situation really comes also from the funding modalities that we have, funding mechanisms. For as long as we don't have a continuous stream of research funding, and continuous stream of research funding doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to make a useful proposal and stuff like that. But while we need to move more, for example, here on the African continent, we need to move more towards governments allocating fixed percentages of the national budget towards research. Because it's not like we're going to have a problem now and then it runs away because we had that big project that was funded by who. We need to have this continuous reiteration of, we figured this out, how do we move from here to the next step? And so you should have a way in which you can get additional resources within country even, or even at continental level, to start building research funds in our own countries. And I think to a certain extent, CGIAR suffers from that problem as well, because if for example, development aid included a percentage that goes into research that's allocated not just to CGIAR, but also to countries, that can create a continuous stream of funding where then if you are doing good research that makes sense for the development agenda of the country, you can get resources. For now, it's trickles. Yeah, it's trickles. And if CGIAR gets funding and then tomorrow it is cut and then you cut from your partners, we keep annoying each other by doing that. So I think there are things definitely we can do better in that space. But I think together we can also advocate for greater funding, better funding mechanisms that are not stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, which does not help problems that come on a continuous basis. So that's an area that I think maybe as a research collective, we can also try and figure out how we might bring greater momentum towards funding.
We're running a bit short of time, so I'm going to go around with some sort of final comments, if we could. I think that should, but I just think, just on the comment, it reminds me of a conversations we had earlier this week, and that as researchers, all of us here and online, as you were saying, we have agency, and to some degree powers, although we often see ourselves as recipients of funding. We also are the community that generates scientific results, and maybe as you're saying, the demand or the desire to have continuity in funding and sufficient funding is something that maybe we sit back and wait for others to do, and that we should perhaps be more active in promoting in our own communities and our own institutions. But just a thought. But anyway, thank you. That we've had a really rich conversation. I'd like to ask if you any sort of final comments, thoughts you'd like to leave with us about the CG. You can see it's clearly a work in progress. It also means it's probably a work that we can contribute ideas to, since it isn't finalized. So that sounds exciting. But any final thoughts for now?
Well, I consider myself an optimist as well, sometimes impatient and sometimes patient. I see opportunities here, and I see, for me, one of the biggest opportunities with the CG, because of, our, and the ways in which the research is designed, is a great ability to foster South-South cooperation and collaboration. Many of our research initiatives, are designed for work in multiple countries, bring together partners from multiple countries. And what we have realized over the many years is that often, researchers in global majority countries, I love the term, by the way, that you use, don't have enough opportunities to engage with each other. And so, what I'm really looking forward to here is, thinking about how we use the opportunity, the privilege, the responsibility of being this type of a global organization to really support the kinds of research and the ways of doing research that would most benefit our partners in global majority countries, because that's how we're going to solve the problems we think we want to solve. We're not going to solve it, by us doing the research and hoping that someone else is going to pick it up. We have to do this in partnership, and we have to do it really well. And so, I just want to say to everyone here, hold us to account. Ask us difficult questions. You will help make us better.
Great. Thank you very much. Namakoa, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think in terms of last words, I would like to speak to the African context. I think our continent has a lot of challenges, but our continent has also got unprecedented opportunities. When I look around the world, it's the only continent that has got a continental agricultural program in the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. even those countries that are not implementing. We have, I think, 44 countries that are implementing. But when they are reporting to the African Union on the CAADP biennial review process, 53 countries report. Usually it's those that are stuck in conflict and are not able to do anything that don't report. So there's unprecedented buy-in into the program. Beyond that, as part of the UN Food Systems Summit, CAADP has then been used as a framework for a continental common position on food systems transformation. Within that context, as CGIAR, we have said the country conveners should link with their country CAADP focal points and create teams in countries where we can look at our research actually impacting better. I mean, if you have a program that can have ripple effects across the continent, it's an important one, but I don't think as a research community, we pay enough attention to it. And so I would like to finish off with a call to action, if you will. Let's pay attention to this continental program that multiple African countries are implementing, because it's a gateway of programs through which we can implement solutions from our research, but also a gateway to programs in which we can embed research that can bring about food systems transformation in a much bigger way and perhaps even accelerate momentum in the short term. Thank you.
Thank you for a really exciting discussion, and good luck to one CGIAR. And I think we could thank our panelists here.